it takes first a real clarity, and this is we're gonna break this down into sections as we go through. It takes a real clarity on approach to text. So when I get the material, and you and I talked about this a little bit, right? What do I do when I get the material? How can I put myself in a space that has me in a creative clarity about character, and most importantly, a bridge between myself and the circumstance, the story, and the character itself? That's going to be the first two classes. So we're going to do a lot of talking about this material. Then, when you're on, we have a break in this. So hopefully, are you all of you guys doing 4? I don't know if you're all doing 4. Yeah, you are, okay, good. You're doing 3. Then when we have the break, it's really about how do I prepare. Once I get the understanding of this is the story, this is the circumstance, this is the character, then how do I prepare? That comes from on really March 28th. And then the last class is really about execution. How do I execute the material that I broke down, deconstructed, found a bridge to myself? So you guys always want to see it in 4 parts, right? Always first is text. Okay? And when we talk about text, what we're really talking about are 3 different parts of it. Story, character, okay? And really, to me, we can call this a lot of things, but I call this, the last part, circumstance. And the reason why circumstance is different than story for me is circumstance allows me to hopefully discover the bridge between myself and the character, okay? And this bridge allows for what is absolutely necessary to really keep an interest from your casting directors, to really keep an interest in professionalism, to get a call back, intimacy. Okay. A lot of the time when we think about text, the first thing we try to get is the words. And there is a real danger with this. We Ghostbuster the words, okay? The words are only part of what's on the page, okay? If we get lost trying to memorize words, what's going to happen to us? What are the pitfalls that happen? And they happen automatically. The minute we start prioritizing, hey, look, I better know my lines as opposed to know the story, understand the specific circumstance, and see the character, what happens to us?
You get locked in.
What do you mean locked in?
You're not taking a risk. You are limiting yourself.
Okay, so the material becomes flat, right? What else happens to us when we get stuck in words?
We get in our head.
Get in our head. And what happens, Valencia, the minute we get in our head?
The minute we get in our head, then we're not living.
Right. So then the moment-to-moment life goes where? Out the window. What else happens to us? And you guys want to think about, for you, when you've been, okay, the first thing I got to do is memorize. First thing I got to do, memorize the lines. The minute I set myself up like that, what happens to the overall material? Are we able to find details about the character's life, or able to discover the details of the circumstance of the scene? If all we're thinking about is memorizing the words. Now, why not? And you want to really always start this with your own experience. When you prioritize, hey, look, it's not that we don't want you to memorize, number one, okay? So you got to be able to memorize. But when we prioritize the words over circumstance, character, and story, what happens to the words themselves? Are we able to hold on to every single word? Are we able to be word perfect with our scripts? Why not?
Because there's no intention.
There's no intention? Absolutely. Why else? No intent, right? Why else? What else happens? And you guys want to think, remember, the minute I get up there, right, I'm standing up there in front of somebody, or I'm up there doing a self-tape, and I go, okay, what's my first line? What happens to my head? My head starts really wrapping itself around only what? Only the first line. So then when I make a transition to the next line, what happens?
You don't remember it.
You don't remember because you are caught in this dynamic. So what you automatically do is limit, or I would say restrict, your freedom and your creativity. And what's really interesting about this is most casting directors will tell you, look, all I want you to do is have an idea and know the lines, right? If they don't see a sense of freedom and creativity, how come they won't see a choice that you made about the material? How come just from this thing, these two things not being present in your performance, how come they can't see a choice? Because that's all they really want. Can you make a choice and can you get the lines? And if you cannot, if you don't have freedom and creativity, they won't see a choice. Why not? What will they see, really? You doing what? Yes, there we go. Acting. Okay? The minute they see you acting, they put you in a category. It's not a bad category. They just go, oh, they're not ready. Do you get me? And they'll go, oh, well, that was pretty good. Okay, thank you. That was good work. And then they'll move on. They can't really make and give you an adjustment unless they see an element of creativity and freedom. They can't really give you an adjustment unless they see you have a connection to story. They can't really give you an adjustment or allow you, because look, they want you to win. They do not want you to fail. Obviously, you're sitting as a casting director watching hundreds and hundreds of self-tapes, being in an office sitting watching hundreds and hundreds of actors. You do not want to see bad acting. It will drive you crazy. So when they don't see character, when they don't see the circumstance of the scene, when they don't see the beginning, middle, and end of the scene move from moment to moment, they cannot adjust you. And if they cannot adjust you, what automatically gets stuck is, well, I don't know how to talk to them about this performance. I don't know how to lead them to a place where they can maybe get one of these three things. They're not acting coaches, they're casting directors, right? So if I sit there and go, okay, I'm going to start with this, instead of start with these two elements, story, or these three elements, story, character, and circumstance, I'm not giving myself a way to get to a freedom, to get to a creativity, to really get to a moment-to-moment life, and therefore I am not providing whoever is watching this tape an ability to see a choice, to see an idea. And if they don't see the idea, automatically you get thrown out on the bin. And that's how quickly this issue of text screws up the audition, right? So you have to find a way, or have a way, that allows story, character, and circumstance to be a priority before you get caught in this mishigas, in the words, okay? So that's really what today is about, is really trying to understand your approach to text, okay? And trying to be specific about it so that it leads you automatically to a deconstruction of character, story, circumstance that can lead you automatically to a performance that has a freedom and creativity that's somewhat moment to moment, but most importantly presents the casting director, producer with an idea of the material that you creatively interpreted. Do you guys get that? If that doesn't happen on the minute you get the sides, you get caught in this horror of the audition. The audition is a horrible process, right? You're sitting there, you're being evaluated. You know if you're broke, you know you want this job, you need this job. The minute those results take priority, you get into a right or wrong context. And what is the danger with right or wrong context for the audition? There's a huge, huge danger. If I'm sitting there going, there's a right way to do this material, what does it automatically eliminate?
Creativity.
Creativity, what else? Choices, what else?
Freedom.
Freedom, what else? Most importantly, if right or wrong is the priority, me, am gone. What I saw for the character, what I interpreted as the circumstance, what I understood to be the life of the story gets thrown out the window. The minute I get thrown out the window, any choice or freedom or creativity or moment-to-moment impulse, which really comes out of freedom and creativity, disappears. And I get stuck flat in the words, stuck in my head, hoping for the result. And that's how quickly you can lose a job, lose a callback. Is you're sitting there going, oh, there's a right way to do this. So let's ask, is there a right way to do an audition? No, why not? Why not, honey?
Because you're limiting yourself.
Well, what do you mean? Well, yeah, okay, so what does that mean now? I get the sides, I'm playing a lawyer, let's say, I'm on Law and Order, I'm defending, Law and Order SVU, I'm defending a horrible serial rapist. I might look at that and go, there's a right way to do this. What would be the right way to do that? Right, it's impossible to determine. Why, Tiff?
Because now you're cutting off, like, the life of
the
character.
Of the character gets completely eliminated with right or wrong. The minute we start to go, hey, there's a right way to say this line. There's a right way to be this woman, to be this man. The life of the character gets completely cut off. Because what you're saying is this is the result that they want. You're putting it on who? Them. Are you inside their heads?
No.
Did you get a blueprint of how each line was supposed to be spoken, how your body was supposed to behave? No. So how is it possible that there's a right way to do this? Also, you have to go, is in any level of artistic expression, does right or wrong work? Why not? Is art about being right or wrong?
No.
When we're creative, do we care whether we're right or wrong?
No.
No, absolutely not. So why do I get sides and go, oh, this is the right way to do this? Why do I do that to myself? Let's start with you.
Habit. That's how
Habit.
we were cultured, brought up. You know, you do this, you don't do that.
Okay, so you think it's out of maybe our socialization, the way we look at what? What are we looking at if that's the case? If
We're
they're
looking at how people will perceive us. What will they think of us? Will they approve of us?
So right or wrong goes to approval. Number one. Okay, so when you've got material, why have you said, okay, this is the right way to do it? Because we've all been there. We've all done that.
Why do I see the right way to do it?
Yeah, and not only see it, but you have it in your head, right? You're like, oh, okay, yeah, this line is supposed to be, I'm supposed to be crying here. I'm supposed to be angry here. I'm supposed to be in a depth here. I'm supposed to be nice, polite here.
Because I guess I am in my head trying to figure what they think is the right
Trying to figure out what they think is the right thing. And I like the they, right? We put that in bunny ears, the they, because we have no idea who the they are. Okay, for you, when you've got material, why have you gone to yourself, oh, this is the right way to do it?
Well, I think what's familiar to me would be like the lines that I'm saying. So I'm thinking because like in my real life, when I read a line, I've said this line feeling a certain way.
Right. So I gotta be real.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because if I'm not real, what's gonna happen?
It's gonna be like.
It's gonna be wrong.
Yeah.
right? So the more real I am, the more right I could be. And of course, this is not a documentary, right?
Yeah.
So even if I think that this real might work, real is just an idea,
Yeah.
right? And most importantly, it doesn't work with the art form.
Okay.
Do you get that? Why have you said, oh, there's a right way to do this?
Thinking that way would be the most likely to book the job.
Yes. So if I'm right, then I have an opportunity to book. Now, of course, when you've been right in your head, did these sides exactly as you thought they were supposed to be? Have you booked?
No.
No. Okay. But yet and still,
Right.
even though the pattern doesn't work,
Right.
yet and still, we get fixated on booking. Why have you said right or wrong to yourself when you've done an audition?
Because I'm coming from my own particular point of view.
So therefore what?
So therefore, that must be it, because that's how it appears to me. So based on my life experiences, then I'll think, okay, so this is how it ought to be.
Yeah, okay, now this is a great adjunct to real, because it's not really real. It's that if it ain't how Tiffany sees it, then it's what?
Not it.
Not it. It's wrong. So it's not that you're really worried about being real. You're worried about following through on the idea of what you saw. Do you guys get this? It's not that she's sitting there trying to make it real. She's going, I heard how these sides are supposed to go in my head, and I am trying to match exactly to the teeth, to behavior, to intonation, to the way the character actually sounds through every word, and that becomes the right way to do it.
I get caught up in like how I originally see it,
Yeah.
and then I won't break away from that.
Right. In fact, we get so captivated by how we originally hear it in our head and see it in our head. If we derivate even the slightest amount, we're automatically off or we're automatically wrong. Even though in our head is just what? What are we really seeing? When we're going through the sides, what are we really seeing?
Imagination.
That's exactly right, honey. All we're doing is imagining. It's not that this imagining has to lock us into anything. It allows for us to just what? Begin to what? See the story, see the character, and see the circumstance. See elements of it. Not to lock us in or captivate us, but to give us a way to start clarifying these three elements. Do you guys get that?
So the thing I was gonna ask is, what if you're just going with your feeling?
What do you mean?
Like, for example, if you're doing it and in the moment you feel something, you go with that.
Okay,
Would that
but
be
when
trying
you
to get it right
first
then?
when you first get it, are you saying that there's a feeling you associate to the whole scene itself? Are you a feeling associated to specific words, specific lines?
Well, I mean, certain words that I'll get connected to in that, but I'm talking about in the moment when I'm doing it, I'm in front of the camera, putting it on, I'm doing it, sometimes I'll get a feeling and go with that feeling.
Right, but let's say that feeling doesn't match what you had in your head. Are you going to be able to trust your impulse if you're worried about right or wrong?
No.
Right. Are you able to derivate from, like, I got a sensation that's coming out just in this moment, right? I'm up here, I'm doing the self-tape, or I'm up here in front of a casting director and I'm feeling something. But what I'm feeling goes directly contradictory, or is a direct contradiction to what I thought the material should be. What do I do in that space?
But now I know better. That's my feeling.
Now you trust, right?
Yeah.
But you would have to have an approach that allows this to be gone, right? So in other words, if I get captivated by what I think these sides should be and how I think this character should look, then once I get to execution, that's going to either take me out of a moment if I have a new impulse that's just created, or it's going to put me right back in my head. And that transition from one moment to the next becomes what, George? The minute I'm in my head and that impulse goes directly against what I thought it should sound like, what happens to the transitions?
It's stagnant basically. It doesn't really happen.
It doesn't happen. Transitions don't happen, and if transitions don't happen, we don't see story. Story are about a series of transitions that move us from beginning, middle to end. Okay? Without understanding how this approach can allow me to not get captivated or stuck in what I think the side should be, but get me caught and get me inspired in the creation of character, circumstance, and story, that I'm saving myself. Then my choices in the moment of execution can be expansive as opposed to restrictive. Do you guys get that? And this is the science of the audition. What else happens? Because look, do we have a lot of information about these three elements? Character, story, and circumstance when we get material.
Not usually.
Not usually. So let's say I'm doing an under 5, and Gabe is a killer at this, right? I got 3 lines in the whole thing, right? And the 3 lines are about some level of circumstance that maybe is about the nature of the show. So if it's a procedural, it's like a Law and Order or like a Grey's Anatomy, it's about being a doctor or I'm a patient. It's about a crime committed and I'm a cop or I'm arrested and da-da-da-da-da. So all I have are very small, basic elements. Why does the little amount of information I have lead me to want to go to right or wrong? So if I have less information about the character and material, I always get more caught in the right or wrong than if I have more information. Why?
Because we want to make sure that the choices that we are making fit in with the story. And since we don't have a lot of information about the story, we think that that there has to be a right or wrong, because we have to fit into the very narrow scope of information that we have.
Absolutely. The less information you have, you are trying to match and do that information exact and precise. The more information I have, what happens?
Then you get more freedom, you get more creativity because you have more space, more information to work with.
Okay, or, what's the or on that? Because you're absolutely right. Sometimes when I have a lot of information, I can make a lot more choices, I can see a lot more, I can imagine a lot more of the character's life, see the backstory, create an interesting understanding of what got this person to this specific situation. So I can start allowing my imagination to create a little bit more. But there's another problem. What's the other problem with the more information
With too
we
much
have?
information?
Well, not too much, just
Or
the
just
more.
a lot more information.
That can lead us to right or wrong. See, because the more information I have, what do I start seeing about my choices? My choices have to fit what?
The story.
Directly fit the information that I'm given. Right? So if I get a paragraph breakdown, and I saw this just recently on Saturday, a friend of mine came in here, he's auditioning for procedural, they gave him the whole script, this is his third callback, so he's crazy. Automatically driving himself, it's like, why will they not give me the part, right? Third callback. It's a series reoccurring, meaning that they're going to be on a couple of shows. They gave him the fullness of the character arc. 27 pages, right? He chooses 2 scenes out of this 27 pages. So he's maybe doing 8 pages of material. And he's sitting there going, oh my God, now I see it, right? So the minute he starts seeing all these elements of the character that is on the page, that is given to him from the beginning of what the audition material is through the end, he is now getting caught in an idea. Why do you think this idea is becoming oppressive?
Because he feels like he needs to stay in line with what he's reading about this character.
That's why, honey.
He can't deviate.
Why can't he deviate now?
Because
It's
that's
his
wrong.
third callback.
That's it.
What do you
Because
mean?
it's his third callback and he doesn't want to fail.
He does not want to screw it up. So now, because of the pressure in connection to the audition, we get even more stuck in, I got this more and more information, I better make sure I fit it in the right way. I perform and execute the 2 scenes that I'm going to do in the right way. Now I have to figure out how to combine all the information that I've got from all 27 pages into these 2 scenes. Now, is that possible?
No.
No, why not?
Because the story, it's a journey, and so he's not going to be able to. I mean, what happens in the first scene is not necessarily the same character that happens.
Absolutely. So if he's sitting there thinking, well, because he chose 1 scene from the beginning, 1 scene from the middle, but he kept going. Well, this is where the character ends up. So don't I have to bring that in to the scene 1, scene 2? And I'm going,
No.
How? Why would you think that? He goes, well, why would they give me the material if they don't want me to use it? Do you guys get this? So the minute you get the material, you go, I got to use everything. I have to, right? Because it's all valuable to understanding who I'm playing, right? But then it's this piece. Well, what is the circumstance of the life in each scene that you are creating? And if you get trapped in this idea that the more you have to fit every single element of the character into the first, second, and third scene, even though that information is not part of the circumstance, you're doomed. You're doomed. So both things can work against you. Less information and more information. You have to still find an approach that allows you to keep creative. And this is the toughest thing about the audition. You can never minimize the pressure you put on yourself. It has deathly influences. It influences the context in which you see the audition. It influences the context in which you approach all these 3 points, character, circumstance, and story. But it also influences the way you read something. If I'm understanding this pressure of needing to book, wanting to get a callback, wanting to be good, right, and get that sense of approval. If I have an audition technique that tries to backdoor that pressure, I'm not being honest with myself, and at some point in time, the context of right or wrong will come back to haunt me. Do you get that?
Well, the question that I have is, when you're getting ready to do the audition, or you're about to do the audition, and you feel like you're not in that depth of level of the emotional depth, and that gets in the way, and then you get blocked. Is that trying to get it right or wrong?
Well, it depends. Emotional result is a result nonetheless. If I'm sitting there going, I have to get, like, I see this character's in pain. Therefore, I have to get to some point of crying, right?
Well,
then I'm focusing myself on that. And the details of the overall circumstance that leads to that specific release of pain gets pushed to the side.
It's not crying, it's wanting to get overwhelmed by the pain, or allowing myself to get overwhelmed by it.
Either way, it's still an emotional result. Okay. Do you get me? If I'm sitting there going, and let's say my character is extremely happy, right? They're joyous, and I'm sitting there going, well, I have to find a way to get happy before seeing how the circumstance leads my character to that joy. I'm in deep trouble, because the transitions that lead there, that push me into that state of being, become less important than the actual state of being or the result of the state of being that I'm focused on. And that becomes a real danger. Like, there's a lot of people who, and I've seen this happen with auditions, they go, man, I got to this emotional depth. And I'm like, great, how'd you get there? They're like, what do you mean? I was there from the beginning. You know? I'm like, well, you said the first line is hi. Hello, how are you? Nice to meet you. They're like, oh, wait, I wasn't supposed to be in pain there? I'm like, you were saying hello to somebody. You were in an introduction. And then you're a nurse who's handing a hypodermic needle to somebody who has an allergic shock. And you're going to cry? Do you know, like, but it was a heavy circumstance, Carl. I was like, Honey, your job was a nurse. You do not sit there and flip out. Do you get me? Yeah. So you have to be very careful to balance it. Of how do I balance? Am I sitting there feeling that, okay, when I read it, there's an emotional depth that I have to be in that overwhelms my character? Or am I reading it understanding there's a circumstance where that emotional depth gets released, gets covered, gets worked, da-da-da-da-da. Okay?
So going back to your friend, so in that case where they had all of the information, right?
Who's auditioning today, by the way?
Oh.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Break a leg, break a leg.
Exactly.
Would it almost be better to not have that information in that sense?
No, honey, why not? If you're doing fences, don't you want to know everything about fences?
Yes.
If I'm doing a scandal, I want to know as much as I possibly can about the nature of the show, about who the leads are, about the drama that's happened to it, right?
Yeah.
What I can't do is do what? What's the next step that screws that up? Well, I got this information. Now what? If I don't put that information in a creative context, then I'm in trouble. Because it will automatically lead me to, well, now there's a right way of doing this.
There's a right way to do Scandal.
There's a right way to do Grey's Anatomy. There's a right way to do Law and Order SVU. There's a right way to do all these shows. There's a right way to do a Netflix show. You get me? And the minute you get stuck in that, your creativity goes away, and the casting director goes, I didn't see you make a choice. Remember, for them, they're only bringing the material to producers and directors. That's all they're doing is bringing the audition material, the self-tapes auditions, or you to another level. So you have to pass through them. And in passing through them, they got to see that you had an idea. That you're creative. That you're not sitting there doing engineering schematics about a basic audition. That, okay, this happens here, then I go A plus B plus C equals D. Right? They want to see that you at least have enough creativity to move the story along and to be in connection to the circumstance. Because then they'll go, okay, now the words were a part of the circumstance, but they weren't the only things that the actor focused on. And therefore we saw a level of freedom and we saw a level of choices. You guys get this? So it really becomes a very difficult thing to not acknowledge the pressure. The pressure is there the minute you get the material. And we all have a bunch of different ways to deal with this. But to not acknowledge this, to not have a technique that's specific, that doesn't allow you to backdoor this, but allows you to utilize this pressure and give it over to the sense of how you approach your material, without that, you're going to be in trouble. Because really, you're automatically putting yourself in conflict. In conflict with the material, in conflict with what you feel you have to do, and therefore you're going to jump right to your head.
So part of the science is to utilize the pressure.
You're going to have to.
And the anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah, right?
And yeah, it's much easier said than done.
Oh yeah, that's why there's a class, honey. Because you're absolutely right. It is that difficult. One of the first things that I tell people is this is why I always tell people, audition as much as you possibly can. Even if it's practice. Because really what you're allowing yourself to do is own the anxiety, make sure that it becomes a part of who you are and how you approach material, but it also starts taking the weight off it, right? I always tell people, when you stop being afraid when you perform, that's when you should stop performing. Because fear reminds you of how much you want it. So the pressure, that is just reminding you of how much you want to book and how much you want to work. So it becomes a part of who you are, not something that you have to go and either run towards if you're feeling like you're not honest with yourself, or avoid if you're feeling like it's overwhelming. So for my friend today, he called me 8:30 in the morning. He called me up. He's like, oh man, Jesus, I'm freaking out. I don't know these choices. Are they going to work? Are they going to work, right? And so I said, well, look, let's go back to this. Let's go back to the character, right? What's the character dealing with? And interestingly enough, the character is under a lot of pressure. So there's a way you can always, and this is the genius of Batson technique, there's a way of always utilizing who you are in connection to who you're playing. To separate those two, that's when you get into a difficult, because you're lying to yourself. And the minute you lie to yourself, that internal conflict puts you in your head and you're doomed. Okay? Is that clear for everybody? Just so that you really get, this all starts the minute you get the material. This is how quickly an audition is made or lost. Okay?